Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our Leadership Success Navigator webinar series. We have David Liddell, President and Founder of Sky Business Solutions, here to present today's webinar on Drive Performance. David is an executive coach and leadership development expert. He's going to entertain you in this next hour and provide you with some tips and techniques that will improve your leadership skills today. Please welcome David Liddell.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Today's webinar is all about building team unity. How do you build a strong team? What's involved? What's it going to take? And it requires leadership. Everything we do revolves around leadership. Let me share a little bit about how today's program works, and actually all of our webinars work this way. The idea is to spend exactly 60 minutes together on the phone. We like to start on time and end on time. We know how busy everybody is, and the idea is to share with you ideas, thoughts, and I'm hopeful that each one of you will take at least something away from today's webinar that will help you with your day, becoming a stronger leader and building a stronger team. Specifically for today's topic. We'll run about 45, 50 minutes, and I'm going to have, there's going to be a worksheet involved here. I hope everyone has downloaded the worksheet. And then about 10 minutes before the hour, we will end and ask for questions. Do feel free to upload any questions at any point during this webinar. We'll be capturing those, and I'll answer them at the end, and we'll make sure we get to everybody. We usually have enough time to answer all the questions. So with that, I'd like to start in with today's topic. And again, it's all about how do you build a team. And I know that might sound pretty straightforward. Well, you gather some people and you hope things work out. Well, we know that's not much of a strategy. So I'm going to give you some ideas and some thoughts today, almost like a formula or a cookbook here on how you build a team. And part of this, a big key of this, is making sure that as a leader of a team or someone even part of a team, that you're engaged in involving people in some of this discussion. It will make sense as we go into it. I always like to start with a definition of some kind to get us all in the same place, and I'll ask, if I'm doing this live, I'll ask for the audience to participate. What is the definition of a high performance team? And I'm sure there's many out there. This is the one I like, and I'll talk about a few words here. But self-managed. A self-managed group is just that. People don't like to be managed. They like to manage themselves, and it requires leaders to set up an environment where teams can self-manage. Multifunctional means you've got different talents, a variety of different talents within the organization, and different capabilities, different experience, different years of business experience. You want to be sure that you have that multifunctional group of people. And it talks about a whole process. The whole process is, do we understand what it means to be a team, what we're out to achieve, how we want to get there? And then the last point I want to share on this particular slide is being empowered with full authority. And empowered, people talk about, I want to empower my employees, or I'm going to build a more engaged work environment. People want to have decision-making ability. They want to be involved in decisions. They want to be able to have, they want to be sure that their input matters, and that's where the full authority comes in. Do I have the ability to impact my own success and the success of the team? This is what leaders need to do, is they need to create that environment where teams feel as though they have that ability to directly impact their success and the success of the team, as well as extending that to the organization. Let's talk about a few characteristics. There are certainly many characteristics, but here are 6 I want to share with you. A shared mission. Why do we exist? Essentially, what are we here to do? If you think about how an organization is structured, it's structured by departments or silos, we can call them. And those silos or departments need to have a mission, but they have to be in alignment with what the organization's overall mission is. But you have to have a shared mission, and that is essentially can be defined by the group or in conjunction with the group, but there has to be leadership there. Autonomy and authority. Do they have a certain amount of autonomy to make decisions, to have an impact, to fix things when they need to be fixed? The interdependence and shared leadership. The interdependence is we all work together. We rely on one another. A big piece of that is there a culture of accountability within the organization where there is a sense of shared leadership and trust so that the interdependence actually works? Broadly defined jobs, well, everyone wants to know what their job is, but in a strong team environment, there's not hard, firm lines where responsibilities start and end. I mean, essentially, people have to know what they do, how they're going to be successful, but we also want to have a certain level of cross-functional training and the ability for people to pick up where others leave off. We do run lean in organizations. Everybody knows that. And for those of you on the line, you're probably feeling that today. Running lean means if someone's out or someone's unavailable, we have to have the ability for somebody to step in. I talked a little bit earlier about meaningful participation in decisions. It doesn't mean that every decision needs to be a team decision. For those decisions that can be team decisions, great. Most of them are made by an individual, but people want to know that their opinions and their input matters on decisions. You don't want to have a team environment where people are saying, yeah, I don't know why that decision was made, or I don't understand why that decision was made. There has to be clear understanding of why, even if they're not part of it. And of course, the biggest differentiator, or the biggest deal, is high performance, and that means a team is really firing on all cylinders. Problems are overcome more easily. Challenges are met with with a certain level of enjoyment, and even though conflict is not always a great thing, having constructive conflict is good to drive innovation within an organization. And those are the sorts of things that high performance really speaks to. For those of you who are on last month, I just want to revisit the team model, and I'll share enough here so those of you who were not on last month understand what it is we're talking about. But we have a model we use for leadership called the 5 roles of leadership. The working on the business versus working in the business. The working in the business is the manager and technician role. Working on the business, and if you look on the slide here, you'll see that one of the other of the 5 is the architect, which is all about helping design, what the team does. There's the coach. The coach works on the interdependence, the relationships, how the team works together, and that's one of the biggest. But today we're going to focus on the trailblazer, which is the charter. Why do we exist as a team? What is it that we are out to accomplish? And this is a really important piece because oftentimes people will ask me about their leadership capabilities and what's the one thing I need to do to be a better leader? And there isn't one thing. What you have to do is look at the entire picture, look at where you're strong, look at where you're not strong, and work on your strengths, hone those, and certainly minimize weaknesses. But I think as we move forward here with the charter, I'm going to give you a formula here to define and have you help define for your team what is our charter. How do we truly become a high-performing team? And the charter defines that. As you go through this process, I want you to think about not just you figuring it out. Today, that'll be your focus, is to think about it yourself. But I'll encourage you to take this back to your team and have them be part of sorting this out. And I'll apologize right now for clearing my throat. I have a bit of allergy situation here, so I'll try to get through this without driving everybody crazy. So a strong team charter, it answers 5 key questions. And this is what we're going to work on today. Who are you accountable to? Every team is accountable to somebody, whether it's an internal customer, an external customer. It could be an adjacent group, an adjacent department. We always think about your boss or your boss's boss or the CEO. There's lots of entities that you're accountable to. It's being clear about what that is or who that is. More is a better way to say it. What are you expected to accomplish? Essentially, what results do we need to achieve? And you might, we go through this list, you're going to be thinking, well, this is pretty straightforward. Well, everything around leadership is straightforward. The problem is we don't exercise our leadership muscles enough. So I'm bringing to the table here things that you should be thinking about. And you might have a clear picture in your mind, but the question I have for you is, does your team or collectively as a group does your team think about these things, and are you on the same page? Why do you exist? Well, we're going to talk about that. Why do you exist as a team? Well, it's not to get the work done. Getting the work done is what you need to do. The reason why you exist is something different. Just like an individual will have meaning in life, everything you do helps you achieve or realize that meaning. So let's separate the two, and we'll talk about what that means for your group. The kind of team you want to be has a lot to do with characteristics and norms. And again, that's same thing with how will you work together. And part of this, part of the last one, how you work together, relates to what do you want to achieve? How do you want to become better than you are today? So I'll share the team charter model, and the team charter model, we look at key stakeholders, key customers. Who are they? We don't want a list of 87 customers and stakeholders. We want to know who are the key customers and key stakeholders, and I'll have definitions for those in just a minute. We want to understand what results do they expect. That's very important. What are we expected to accomplish by our key customers and key stakeholders? The team, we have to define why we exist as well as how we want to work together. And then, of course, you need to have your ideal team characteristics. If you haven't downloaded the worksheet, here it is. This is a good time to be sure you have it nearby in front of you, because that's what we're going to be talking about for the rest of today's webinar. And I'm going to walk you through each one of these and give you the opportunity to jot some things down. And again, at the end of this, I'm going to encourage you to take this back to your team. And I know if you haven't downloaded, there is within the window here, there is the ability to download that, but it should have been sent to you already. All right, so let's talk about a couple definitions around customers, and I'm going to again have your worksheet handy, because you can start thinking about some of these things. But let's talk about what a customer is and isn't. A customer is anyone who directly receives or uses your product or service. And oftentimes when we think about customer, we think about external customer. But I like to break those down into two categories. We have internal customers. An internal customer could be a person, a whole department, but it's somebody who receives your product or service for internal use. Think about the value stream of your company. If you are in marketing, one of your customers would be sales, and an internal customer for sales might be engineering or operations or production. There's always internal customers. External customers are just that. These are customers who receive your product. This could be the end user, this could be a distributor, it could be some entity outside your organization that will receive or take advantage of your service to better their situation, their organization. So let's zero in on key customers. And what's important here is that you have to think about, and the operative word there is critical. So an internal or external customer whose relationship, influence, or business is considered critical to your success. Now, depending on where your organization sits, you may or may not have direct tie to an external customer, but you certainly, or even a dotted line to an external customer, but you certainly will have a direct line to an internal customer. So I'm going to give you just about 30 or 40 seconds here. I want you to think about who would be an internal customer or external customer for me that what I would consider to be critical for success. Go ahead. About another 10 seconds. All right, good. So you should have 1, 2, maybe 3 jotted down on your worksheet. The idea here is you're starting to think about it when you go back and work with your team. Think about it with them as well. Who is critical to our success? Who are the key customers that we have to think about? and really what's important to them, and that's going to feed into the next section. But before we go there, let's talk about stakeholders. So a stakeholder is a group, department, or somebody or some entity outside, or it can be inside or outside the organization, pardon me, that does not directly receive your product or service. An example of a stakeholder could be maybe your family. Your family is dependent on you to earn a consistent paycheck. It could be something like that. It could be the company stakeholders or owners, or it could be just the employees in general. Your success is critical to helping them succeed. So a stakeholder doesn't receive the product or service, but has a stake, an important stake in how successful you are. So a key stakeholder, very similar to customers, is a stakeholder with a critical stake or interest in your success. And I've heard various answers on this. When I facilitate this dialogue with teams, take them through a workshop like this, we explore it very deeply, and we are able to come up with a kind of a top 5 to 6 list, meaning a combination of key stakeholders and key customers. So take a minute now and think about stakeholders. So they don't receive your product or service, but your success is critical to them. 30 seconds, go ahead. Another 5 seconds or so. Excellent. So you've got key stakeholders, key customers jotted down here. It doesn't mean you're not going to have other customers and stakeholders, but I want you to think about the most critical ones, because your focus, the 80-20 rule, does apply here. 80% of your focus is going to happen with 20% of your key customers and stakeholders, and the idea is to ensure that you're delivering as promised for those that are most critical. So this is all about focus. Now, expected results. These are results that are expected of you by your key customers and stakeholders. So as we go through this next part of the exercise, think about them. Think about those people who are relying on you for your success and for your delivery of product or service. So the definition for the expected results is what your team must do to be considered successful by others, your key customers and key stakeholders. And you also, pardon me, not by others, by ourselves and key customers and key stakeholders. The mistake many leaders will make, as well as teams, is they don't take the time to define what it is they set out to accomplish. The organization might do it for them, to say, a sales team might be, you have to bring in revenue, and a production team might be, you need to produce so much product. But there needs to be more to it. You don't want it always to be a top-down directive. I mean, you're going to have input from the organization always. That's going to come from the top. But it's important to create a dialogue as a team to define what's important to you. And it's typically always going to be in alignment with what's best for the company, if your leader's doing what they need to do, and usually they are. But I want the team to think about it. Don't leave it up to assumption. So here are some categories I want you to consider, and I'm going to ask you to write down a few things here. But these are the most common categories that organizations and teams will use to define how we need to succeed. So it's cost. It could be the cost of a product. It could be the cost of your service. It could be a function of your productivity, which impacts cost. So what is it that you're expected to do? We know today, being a very competitive landscape for most organizations, you can't just allow your costs to run out of control. It makes you uncompetitive, and it makes it difficult for any kind of growth. It's really essentially a function of what's expected of us. The value stream of your company, which cuts across the silos or the departments, well, the cost at the end, meaning the cost to deliver the product or service, is a function of how well the organization works together. So any cost that one particular team adds to a product or service gets passed on, and of course it adds up at the end. Every team has a responsibility to produce, deliver results relative to cost. I think quality speaks for itself. What is the level of quality we need? Not everything needs the best quality. Sometimes it's, no, that's not our product. Our product is more good enough. We're a commodity. We're not looking for the best. Where some organizations say, no, we're low volume, high quality, and that certainly relates to what each department does. Speed, essentially on time. When's it due? How quickly do we have to produce it? Service essentially is the relationship. If we think about the category of service around results, what level of service are we looking for? That could be things like responsiveness. And then of course quantity. Well, oftentimes there is a volume aspect to what we do. How much, when, how fast, what's the quality, what's the cost? Now, you don't have to have measures in each one of the areas. It's not necessary. But if you're going to have 5 or 6 customers and stakeholders, there's a likelihood that you're going to have many of these. So once you take a moment, think about what results you're expected to achieve, but you need to put yourself in the shoes of the customers and the stakeholders. And I'm going to add something to this. When you go back to your organization, when you have the opportunity, a great way to find out what the customers and stakeholders expect of you is to ask them. I know it doesn't seem like that's something you need to do, but I've asked organizations to do it many, many times. It's been done, and they always come back with, we learned something. We didn't realize what's expected of us. We made assumptions. So again, going through this exercise today might seem, well, this is easy. This is fundamental. And it is, but it's more than often we get away from fundamentals. So I'm going to give you like 30 or 45 seconds, maybe a minute, because there's a little bit more here. What are the results you're expected to achieve to be successful through your for yourselves, key customers, and key stakeholders? Go ahead. Okay, about 15 to 20 more seconds. All right, a few more seconds here. Okay, wonderful. You should have now stakeholders, customers, and expected results. This is your scoreboard. Like every organization, everything we do in life, there's always a scoreboard of some kind. From the most basic to the most complicated and the most successful organizations, we all have measures of success that tell us, is what we're doing, does it matter? And are we doing the right things? You've got to have these success indicators, and if you work at these as a team, you have stronger buy-in. People are more engaged. They feel more empowered. They feel as though they have authority to do things. I mean, so one of the biggest challenges I see with teams is that the leader of the team wants more decisions made beyond them, meaning they want their team members to make more decisions, and they're reluctant. And it's not it's most often not because they don't want to make decisions. They don't have the information to make the decisions. They're not confident to make the decisions. So this is a perfect ideal starting point to help people feel more confident in their ability to be a contributing team member and to be confident in their decisions. All right, your team's purpose. Well, this one always trips people up. So let's talk about this, because I do this with organizations when we're talking about strategic planning. What's your vision? What's your mission? All that oftentimes fluffy stuff that gets posted on the wall in your companies and nothing gets done about it, or it gets forgotten. But I ask organizations, why do you exist? And I always hear well, we're here to produce the best product, quality, blah, 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 blah. Wonderful, great. That's what you do. The question is, why do you exist? And existence has a lot to do with things like value and other things. But if you think about it, if you could define, or in a very short sentence, what is the number one reason why you exist, you might think about things like the value that your team provides. And the value is always in the eyes of the stakeholder, the customers, or the key stakeholders and key customers. It's always through their eyes in terms of what your value is. So if you think, and I use some real basic examples to get people in the right frame of mind. I'll talk about people, if someone has to go to the surgeon to have surgery, and I'll ask, well, what does the surgeon do? And inevitably, people always say, well, they go to the surgeon to get better, and that's what they do. But the surgeon actually cuts you. They cut into you, and they actually move your organs around and do the things they need to do. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but in the end, the value they provide is they make you better. And that's where I want organizations and teams to think about, well, we know what you do. We know you're busy. We know there's a lot going on, but what value do you provide? What's the equivalent of making your patient better? And that's where there's, so you always have to think in terms of, what does the customer and the stakeholder think? So I'm going to give you some examples, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to think about your organization. If you think about outside sales, your sales organization, these are the people who are visiting your clients. You could have an inside sales team as well, but essentially these are the people who are talking to your customers, demonstrating your company's value proposition, talking about your products and services, asking the right questions, and making sure that the value is they're developing new opportunity for your company and they're creating competitive advantage. Good salespeople don't sell anything. What they do is they develop strong relationships with new people, new customers, create new opportunity and competitive advantage. That's the value. If you're at a customer service department, your value, your team's purpose could be, and again, this is something that a team needs to decide, but these are my examples, could be strong customer loyalty and customer retention. There's a lot of value there. It takes a long time to get a new customer. You very quickly can lose customers. So if customer service, if you think about their purpose, is making sure you hang on to your customers. And I'll give you a third one. Let's say you're part of an IT department. The value there could be creating a seamless, I wrote down seamless, trouble-free use of technology systems. If you think about end users in a company that has an IT department, they don't really want to know who IT is. They just want to know that their systems work and it's trouble-free. And that's where, if an IT department says, yeah, our internal customers really don't know us that well because we do such a good job of providing a trouble-free environment, that's actually a good thing. So with that in mind, I've given you 3 examples. I want you to think about your team's purpose. So you'll see on your worksheet, item 3, why we exist. Why don't you take a shot at trying to define what's your number one reason for being is. You could have many, but pick one. I'll give you another 45 seconds for that. Go ahead. 15 more seconds. All right, great. I know that part's not easy because you're probably thinking to yourself, boy, what's everyone else in the team going to think? And this is why I keep coming back to the concept of getting people involved in this discussion. It could be done a variety of ways, but you likely have weekly or perhaps monthly meetings. This could be a great topic, is to pick one of these topics and work through this process. I encourage doing it all in one sitting because it's more vigorous and you get a lot more from it. But if your meetings are short and sweet, you like to get through them, there's certainly the possibility of just doing this one piece at a time. But do it in the context of the whole process. Good, so you know now why your team exists. Let's talk about team characteristics, and that's item 4 in your worksheet, which I'll have you write down. I know he didn't give you a lot of room in the worksheet, but you could certainly do this on a clean sheet of paper. So ideal team characteristics. Think about how a team functions, and I've got a definition up there. It's collective strengths is the key to all this. It gives you, business, marketplace, economy. These are all things that throw organizations into a tailspin at times. If you all remember back to 2008, 2009, that was a tough time for the economy. We had a pretty significant meltdown, and it was tough in many organizations. The companies I work with, some struggled. Many of them didn't because they built a foundation to allow them to push through this stuff. It wasn't that it was easy, but they didn't suffer like a lot of companies did. And the important thing, what they found is if we work aggressively on understanding how we need to work together, what our value is, where we're headed, and work aggressively towards that plan, we're going to be successful. So I want to think about team characteristics, and these are things that are important to each individual that set the standard for what it's like for the kind of team we want to be. So let me give you some ideas, and this list could go on and on and on, but what you can think about when you think about characteristics, think about how your team communicates with one another. Communication is, I consider, by far one of the most underutilized and most important elements of how teams work together. You can talk about a team, you can talk about an entire company. The companies that learn how to communicate well in tough times are the ones that do extremely well in good times. So communication is critical. Building trust and respect in organizations, very important. Think about characteristics related to trust and respect. If you don't have trust and respect, things don't work well. Communication is the vehicle in which trust and respect is built, so they're directly connected, but think about those sorts of things. Consider collaboration. Do we work effectively together within our team? Are we willing to share information? Are we willing to challenge one another in a positive way to drive innovation? Are we willing to challenge one another across the value stream from department to department? Are you willing to challenge your boss at times? So collaboration is the positive aspect of all of it, but you have to think about what collaboration really means. And collaboration is it's really a function of making sure that you are getting more, kind of the 1 + 1 is greater than 2 concept, that you're getting more from one another, because people really need to challenge each other to be collaborative. Problem solving, critical. Good team leaders will drive problem solving down through the organization. I'll put 2 heads up against 1 head anytime in terms of a consistent approach or consistently coming up with strong solutions. Team leaders have a tendency, because they've oftentimes been promoted, have a tendency to solve problems for the team. And what you want is you want your team to solve the problems, or you want the individuals to come to the table with solutions. So you've got to drive that mindset. When you're thinking about characteristics, think about quality? What's the level of quality that's expected from us? And what's the standard in which we intend on behaving? Okay, because that's what characteristics are all about. It's about human behavior. And then goal setting. How are we going to do that? And so, here I'll just throw some very basic examples at you in terms of team characteristics. It could be things like we are cross-trained. It could be very simple things. It could be we're very flexible in dealing with our customers, internal customers. It could be we're going to have our systems and processes are going to be well maintained and well scrubbed, and they're going to be ideally suited to getting the highest results. It could be simple things around communication, that we're going to be open and honest. And I want lip service there. I mean, we're truly open and honest about our communication. We're working collaboratively. So these are things that I think are, these are some ideas for you to think about. What is our team? What kind of team do we want? And these are questions that I'm going to give you an opportunity in a minute to jot some things down that are important to you. These last two items on the worksheet, 4 and 5, really are critical to do as a group, because you can tell the team, a group of people, this is what your characteristics are, but you don't get the immediate buy-in compared to taking a team through a dialogue. And by the way, this is not a 3-hour exercise. What are our team characteristics could be a simple 30-minute exercise with a little bit of pre-work, and then discussing what's most important and picking the top 5 or picking the top 10. That's simple. But you've got to live them after that. You've got to execute on that. So let me give you a chance here to think about what characteristics are important to you, and you can jot them down. I'll give you like 45 seconds on this one as well. Go ahead. Give me another 10 seconds or so. Okay, great. What I'm going to ask you to do, I didn't open this up and I meant to. I'm going to open up the poll question. And my question for everybody, thinking about your organization, what are the characteristics of the best performing teams that you see in your company? And I always like to ask these types of questions. What's the think about a business coach in your life or a coach in your lifetime that demonstrated great characteristics. What are they? What are the best teams? What do they look like today? And because people know what the best teams already look like. The question I have for everybody is, well, great. You know what it looks like. Then why doesn't your team consistently demonstrate those things? So, and your name won't be shown here, so you can just plug in anything you want. And I'd love to get a few thoughts and ideas from you in terms of what are the characteristics of the best performing teams in your company, or even outside your current company. It doesn't really matter, and we'll publish those a little later on. All right, let's see here. Moving right along to the next slide. Team vision and operating norms. Now this is item 5 on your worksheet. How we'll work together, and that has more to do with what is the vision for your team? What do you want it to look like? If you think about the success of your company today, future, and the legacy that you want, from your leadership or within your team, the legacy you want to leave, what is it that you want? So it's how you want to operate as a team, and it's essentially a code of conduct defining who you are and what you stand for. And some of the most successful organizations really push hard on this because it actually creates great, like a positive, constructive competitiveness in the organization and actually within the team itself. So let's think about what this means, and I'll give you some examples. So these are some very simple things, but you can certainly get more aspirational than that. We will treat each other with respect. Now you might say, well, really, shouldn't we already do that? Believe me, respect is earned. It's granted by other individuals, and it's a direct function of how well we communicate and treat one another. And by far, trust, respect, and communication, those combined, are the biggest issues within organizations, meaning underlying every company that I work with, whether they're trying to build leadership, stronger teams, define strategy, most often, or I would say the most common concern or challenge is communication, trust, and respect. So that one I always put on the top list. We'll make team decisions by consensus and delegate responsibility. For any of you who fall into the control freak category, I'm a recovering control freak personally when I worked in the corporate world and realized you can't do it all yourself. So we want to make sure we're delegating responsibility. We'll resolve problems first by identifying root cause issues. And I'm listing these because these are things that I see organizations struggle with consistently. Even teams that perform well don't essentially do well in these particular areas. And then, of course, we will achieve our stated goals and objectives. Okay, straightforward. Yeah, that falls into the, well, of course, we're going to achieve our stated goals and objectives. But stating the fact that we're going to achieve our stated goals and objectives means you have to understand them, you have to think about them, and just because we've talked about them once doesn't mean we're all going to remember this. So thinking about your team, your operating norms, think about yourself. If you're the leader of your team, what legacy do you want to leave? If at some point in your career you want to move up, be promoted, or you just want to leave a strong legacy of success, what's important to you in terms of your operating norms, your team norms? So I'll give you just another 45 seconds here to jot down a few things, and you'll notice my examples start with "we will," and that's done on purpose. So just write down a few thoughts and ideas around "we will do the following things." Go ahead. Got another 15 seconds, and don't forget to jot some things down under characteristics of the best performing teams in your company. I don't have any answers yet. I can't publish it without some answers. That means I've got a bunch of shy people on the line, don't have any ideas yet, or you've got horrible teams in your company. So see if you can jot something down. All right. Right, good. So if you, I noticed a few people came in a little bit after the start of the program, but the start of the webinar. But I hopefully you have something jotted down for stakeholders, customers, expected results, team norms, team purpose, and characteristics. This is a good starting point. This is not in itself the end of the line. This is something where you need to think about, well, what am I going to do with this next? And here are some thoughts to consider as you go back to your organization, figure out how to do this. Number one, your team is an important element of your organization's value stream. If you don't know what I mean by value stream, look it up. But essentially, the value of your company from the time that from the very beginning around communications and PR to the time that your customer receives your product or service, a tremendous amount occurs to make that happen. There's a lot of technology, systems, product, raw materials, but mostly people involved in delivering that value. And it's usually teams of people that are working together to deliver that value. But it cuts across the organization, and it has to overcome natural barriers between silos. And those barriers aren't created by the systems, they're created by the people. I've heard it, if I haven't heard it once, I've heard it many, many times that, boy, business would be easy if it weren't for the people. But it does. It comes down to the people, the collaborative efforts of teams, the persistence and determinations of people, and it's leaders who create these environments. So think about how important it is that the value and the competitive advantage that your company receives and the customer loyalty, it all comes down to how well the team works together and teams work with teams. And that really goes to the second part. It takes the collective and collaborative effort of all team members to make it work. You're only, we hear about, you're only, your team's only as strong as the weakest link, and it's true. What happens, though, if you do have weak links within the organization, it does put strain and stress on other parts of the team. And you'll find that those who achieve and those who are your top performers tend to take the brunt of those who can't or won't keep up. More often than not, it's not about them not having the ability, but they don't necessarily understand what it means to be successful. They don't understand the vision of the team and what success means, and what's expected and what's not expected of them. So having this dialogue around developing a team charter is quite critical. And then the third item here, something to consider for you, is the team needs clear and concise direction to become high performing. If a leader, leaders must lead, and I know that's a little redundant, but not always. People think they're in a position of leadership. Well, they are in a position of leadership, but they don't act like they're in a position of leadership. And leading, the first thing in leading is setting direction. Where are we going? Why do we exist? What do we need to achieve? How do we work together to make it happen? And I'll always, if a team is not performing or an individual is not performing, I'll point to the leader first, not to point blame, but to find a way to fix it, change it, make it better, because it's usually the leader that is the catalyst to get somebody or a team to perform more effectively. And think about this. As a leader, it's your job to create a working environment where everybody can thrive and grow. Imagine if you created an environment where everybody could reach their full potential. Now that may be a little bit of an overreach and unrealistic, but if we work hard to create that environment where lots of different types of people with different skills can compete, then it'll work out. So I want you to think about that as you go back to your organization and work with your team to help them define what this is all about. You're going to be in great shape. They'll be more engaged. They'll understand more about answering, why do I work so hard? Why do I do what I do? And you'll breathe into them more empowerment and drive to succeed. You'll tap into their discretionary effort. I mean, everyone has it, and those are the things that will help drive an organization to the next level. All right, so with that, I'm going to open it up to questions. Before we go to questions, I think we might have a handful. I just want to remind everybody, we run these webinars every month. We always try to do it the same time of the month. It's usually always on a Tuesday, third Tuesday in the month at 2 p.m. That can vary depending on certain holidays, but we'll always continue to advertise. Next month is all about how to build a more engaged workforce. And I've alluded to some of the topics today, the concepts today, but building an engaged workforce is not easy, but it's not necessarily difficult either. And it really comes down to tapping into what drives and motivates people and connecting them to the business. So we'll talk about that next month. With that, Joe, are there any questions here?
Yes, David, we have a couple this week. The first one is, can you also talk about challenges of virtual teams and recommendations on how to strengthen them?
Okay, virtual teams. Now, there's different types of virtual teams, and what I mean by that, you might have a couple virtual people here and there, or you might have your entire team scattered about the country. The same principles apply in terms of defining a team charter. That's very important. The difference between virtual and non-virtual is that you have to be far more deliberate with your communication. You have to work aggressively at defining what your team charter is all about and getting people involved. And then secondly, you have to communicate more. Think about this. When you have the opportunity as a leader to work with a team that is right in front of you, that you can connect with one-on-one, there's a tremendous amount of communication going on there. So the communication, only 7% of communication is the words, and if we're on the phone, we're missing that, the body language, which is more than 50%. If it's email only, we're only getting 7%. Tone and body language are missing entirely. So the virtual aspect is you have to work aggressively at communicating and setting expectation, and then working with individuals to ensure that they're getting what they need through regular interaction. So virtual teams, I suggest regular interaction, probably about once a week, even if it's a very short and sweet, how are we doing, where are we, what challenges do you have to overcome, that sort of thing. Next question, Joe.
Alrighty, we also have, how do you convince employees to buy into a team charter?
Well, I've been talking about it all day, or the whole session here. How do you get them to buy in? Buy-in is contingent on their feedback, their input. Do they have a say in what the team charter is all about? Do they have input value relative to what the team charter is all about? So their opinions need to matter. So I think building buy-in is ensuring that you take them through the process of understanding and providing their input so that it does matter to the ultimate outcome of the team charter.
We have a couple of more. It looks like we have still some time. Is there a leadership style that is best suited to building a high-performance team?
Good question. That a lot. Every leader I run into is a little bit different in terms of style, motivation. Some are aggressive, some are quiet, some are gregarious, some are not charismatic at all. And so the answer is there isn't one, but what I encourage people to do is to find within themselves the style that works for them, so that they build rapport with their employees. Their employees, regardless of your style, your employees need to matter, meaning they need to know that you've got their back, you're there to support them, you're looking out for their best interest in terms of their professional development, and this happens through regular coaching and dialogue, and that they understand how to be successful. So, if you're one of those rah-rah leaders, that's fine. If you're a quiet one, that's fine. But you've got to connect with each person on a one-to-one level. You don't have to be buddies with them. You don't have to be friends, but you have to connect with them on a one-to-one to help connect them to the success of the business. So how does their contribution matter to the success of the business or the success of your team? Either way, same thing.
I have another one here. What's this between team characteristics and team norms?
I get that question sometimes on this as well, and they seem a little bit similar. The team characteristics are more the day-to-day, how do we function as a group? How do we treat each other? How do we want to achieve on a day-to-day basis? The norms has more to do with what do we want to achieve? What do we want to be? What does our vision for greatness look like, if you want to put it in those terms? And might think, well, those kind of sound the same. Well, they do and they don't, because one of them is more tactical, day-to-day, just dialogue. That and the team norms speak to, but how much better do we want to be? What do we really want to achieve? How do we really want to work together in the future? How do we improve it? What does perfection look like almost?
That takes us to all of our questions.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank everybody for your time today. I appreciate it. We will be following up with the recording of this. We'll be posting it on the site. You'll see more emails about next month's webinar. If you have any questions about anything that's been discussed today, please reach out. I'm always available to answer any questions. And if there's something specific you didn't want to ask during today's call, it might be better just to take it offline, and I'd be very happy to walk you through or talk to you about some of your challenges, and I can share some of my experiences with my most successful clients in terms of how we've resolved issues. So with that, Joe, is there anything else you wanted to share? Or are we good for today?
I think we're good for today. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. We'll hope to see you next month. Have a great day.